Hi, I am Professor Amitabh Banerjee. I am the author of Pandemic Third Eye. Chapter reading is to continue the chapter reading. Today, I will be discussing the chapter 21 titled Global Response to COVID-19 Pandemic has been amateurish. Complex issues need many thinking hats. I will be discussing the critical thinking required in a pandemic because now hardly this pandemic is over and there is a warning for future pandemics. So, in the present pandemic, we did not think critically. We just took knee-jerk actions, which caused quite large collateral harm and it caused chaos, anarchy. So, panic, fear, and irrational behavior allowed greed to exploit the pandemic. We have lessons to learn from the way we dealt with COVID, all the more important because of the propaganda of the next pandemic. Panic, fear, and irrational behavior during the past pandemic. The global response to the current pandemic has been amateurish from the very beginning. Lockdowns, school closures, and physical distancing were based on a school computer project of a 14-year-old school student in the USA, daughter of a computer scientist. It overlooked that humans are not inert computer units but social beings. We are not inert units to be fed in a computer, but we are social beings. Similarly, study of efficacy of mask was first done on hamsters under lab conditions, overlooking that humans do not behave like hamsters inside or outside the lab. Hamsters they put on two groups, and in between the two groups they put some barrier like mask, and then they did that as inference. They got the inference that mask do prevent. So anyway, so however, subsequent randomized trials in Denmark and then in Bangladesh on efficacy of mask, thankfully in humans this time, revealed negligent to very modest impact. These are some of the major issues which did not have subsequently did not turn out to have any scientific evidence. And major decisions were taken which affect the lives and livelihoods of all citizens of the world. COVID-19 is not simple as it looks, or counterintuitively, a simple problem was turned into a complex one. Either COVID was not a simple pandemic or it was a simple one which was made deliberately complex. So I will leave it to the listener or the reader of the book Pandemic Third Eye. Edward de Bono, a Maltese physician and a multifaceted personality, proposed that for finding solutions to complex issues, the technique of six thinking hats can contribute immensely in developing a blueprint free from biases of information, optimism, pessimism, emotions, at the same time making way for creative solutions and seeing the big picture. So he proposed six-hat thinking. I'll just try to explain how it could have been applied in the COVID pandemic and maybe in future pandemics also. So a thinking hat is symbolic in Edward de Bono's conceptual way of using a thinking hat is symbolic of thinking without falling in love with your idea, as hats can be replaced. Bono proposed giving a color to each of the hats, encompassing the range of human thoughts and emotions. The colors are white, red, yellow, black, green, and blue. These are the six thinking hats he suggested. He says first you put on the white hat. And what is white hat thinking? The white hat signifies the hard facts and figures on which sound decisions are taken. Like you have a white paper, everything is in black and white. White hat is the data. Then the other for 2 minutes you think with the white hat, then don't get stuck in it. Then you take it off and put on a different color hat. Say you put on the red hat. What does the red hat signifies? The red hat demands the soft skills of knowing the emotions such as fear, hope, beliefs, attitudes, and faith, which may be realistic and often unrealistic. It is the heart. Red stands for the heart, which are emotions, impulses, emotions, fear, panic. Then take it off and the yellow hat. Yellow hat is like sunshine. It denotes the positive side of a thing, optimism, which may be based on facts and sometimes not. Then take off your yellow hat because you don't have everything has got a downside only. If you are only wearing yellow hat, you will see the positive side only. Now put on the black hat. Black is a critic. Black hat does the role of the devil's advocate, proposing caution and to consider the downside of any policy. Like in this pandemic, you are doing lockdown, so this is okay. You have got just on some, of course, it wasn't based on data, but anyway. But if you use the black hat, you would have seen the negative aspects of lockdown. Other color hat is the green hat. Green means creation, new suits, growth. The green hat symbolizes new growth, dwells on innovative solutions, and finally put on the blue hat. That is, blue means the sky, from view from the sky. The blue hat looks at the big picture and ensures that all hats are used. Using the blue hat, you may find that you have less information. So you require a white hat, data you require. Or you have not considered the emotions of the people. So you may require a red hat. So blue hat balances all the hats, that all hats have been used for a balanced approach to a complex problem. Let us see how these hats were used or misused during the COVID pandemic. In the COVID pandemic, rakish cowboys wearing hats of a single color hijacked issues and shot down people wearing other hats. Only one line of thinking was allowed. The gullible public, the majority in most countries, too numb to think clearly, accepted whatever hats were thrust on their heads. Most of these were red hats of emotions, fear, panic, and anxiety. So these only the red hat was used, which are only emotions of the heart. We fear from the heart, we panic from the heart, and anxiety. Cowed into submission, there were happy hunting ground for exploiters wearing the red hat of greed. Greed is also emotion. So, be it politicians, market forces, or career scientists. So they saw opportunity. So these are all red hat. Fear of the panic and fear among the population and greed among the exploiters. Let us address the pandemic using all six hats. Suppose we had used all the six hats. First, the white hat, the hard data. Latest pool data confirm that the initial estimates of lethality were highly exaggerated, as most who died in the West were around 80 years of age with comorbidities. Only 6% of the reported COVID-19 deaths were solely due to virus. Other 94% had two or three comorbidities. Subsequent research attribute such lower lethality to the virus, much lower lethality to the virus. The table shows the age-wise survival rates by researchers from Stanford University. So I have just brought down a table in this book. So 0 to 19 years, the first data, the survival was 99.999%. 20 to 29 years, 98.986. 30 up to right up to 69 years, the survival was 99.5. Or now only 99, almost 0.5 was the infection fatality rate. Only 0.5 up to 69 years of age. 70 plus the survival was 97.6%. 2 to 3% died, those who were above 70 because of the comorbidities. And those who were in care, home care, 70 plus, the survival was 94.5%. So 4-5%, the death rate was high in those who are in age old, in care homes and elderly. So this is the white hat. The data shows that young people were almost, it was just like any ordinary virus in young people. From the white hat, paper or the hat, it is evident that the risk of dying from COVID-19 for children and young people is almost negligible. This is very important for policy since a recent paper in toxicology reports titled "Why are we vaccinating children against COVID-19?" concludes that deaths from COVID-19 in children are negligible. But post-vaccination deaths in children are not negligible. Particular concerns have been raised in the paper about the spike protein of the vaccine, which have been found in different organs, and the certain long-term effects, the black hat thinking, the negative aspects of vaccine. These concerns are serious as data for England and Wales from 1st May 2021 until September 17 September show excess death ranging from 16 to 47% above expected levels in 15 to 19-year-old males. Coincides with the rollout of the vaccines in the age group. The black hats is getting blacker. So these are reference also I have given in this, that there are concerns it is causing myocarditis or other side effects, the vaccine in young people. And whereas the young people did not have any risk of dying from the natural infection, COVID. Let us move to the red hat, the emotions. The red hat on people evoked emotions of fear and panic, concerns that their children will fall prey to the virus. The red hat on exploiters promoted greed, pushing for mass vaccination of children. Both these red hats, the panic and the greed, should be checked by the white and black hats. White hats should take the data, and the black hats should bring out the negative aspects of policies like lockdown and mass vaccination, particularly among healthy and children and those who have recovered. What about the yellow hat? Yellow hat thinking is influenced by perception. For those who use white hat, that is data, extensively to assess risk and benefits, the low mortality is a cause for optimism. For those who succumb to propaganda without looking at the data, blind faith in the vaccine brings optimism. Regrettably, this is the majority creating a happy hunting ground for vested interests. Expert narrative fueled this faith in vaccines as the savior of humankind. Waiting for the vaccine justified prolonged lockdowns and associated misery. The inflated estimate of lethality of the virus were not corrected in people's mind, creating a sort of medical stampede during the second wave in India, where majority of people who had RT-PCR without any symptoms, but rushed to the hospital, overwhelming the system and depriving serious cases of much needed beds and oxygen. If the white hat had been used judiciously from the beginning, this stampede could have been avoided, saving many lives. After the vaccine rollout in many countries, we have more data for white hat thinking, which should guide policy. A paper in the European Journal of Epidemiology is sobering. The study published online on 30 September 2021, titled Increase in COVID-19 are unrelated to levels of vaccination across 68 countries and 2947 counties in the United States, concludes that vaccines should be offered with humility and respect without stigmatizing excess use of the red hat. As mass vaccination does not seem to check transmission. A bit of black hat here. Well, other studies gives us reason to don the yellow hat, particularly in our country. Studies from Israel, among others, have established that recovery from natural infection gives 13 times more robust immunity compared to vaccine. Solid white hat data. The Sero survey in June 2021 by ICMR had brought out that almost 70% Indians and considerable number of children had recovered from the infection and have acquired natural immunity. By any standard, this amounts to herd immunity of the population. So even without the mass vaccination rollout, there was no chance of the dreaded third wave. What role did the creative green hat, the driving innovation, play in this pandemic? Let's see what the green hat did. A laudable one. It brought new technology in vaccine development, paving the way for vaccine development for other diseases. However, like a strong force, it should be tempered with the remaining five hats. Just because a technology has been developed, it should not be used indiscriminately. It can harm as emergency signals from the data, white hat, indicate like cases of side effects are coming up. And lastly, the green hat. No, sorry, it should be the blue hat actually. In the book also I have made a mistake. And lastly, the blue hat, seeing the big picture. The blue hat should balance all the hats equitably and change hats according to the situation and region. No one hat should get stuck indefinitely on our head. Presently, the role of the green hat is the blue hat is to distribute a lot of white hats data and yellow hats optimism based on data and some black hat too regarding the harm of vaccines based on again white hat data driven data. And of course, the major role is to remove the red hats among the population who are still in panic mode and the red hat of greed among the exploiters, which include politicians, career scientists, and market forces. This is the pandemic which is over. The same dynamics can play in the next pandemic or so-called next pandemic. So all the more reason that these lessons from COVID-19 pandemic can be kept in mind for future pandemics, which again can give a free hand to world governments and world authorities to restrict the freedom of the common person, to suspend the autonomy of the common person, to promote the market forces. So one has to learn the lessons, or unfortunately, if we don't learn the lessons from history, we are bound to repeat it. Thank you.